Reverend Dr. Thomas Ndanu is the senior lecturer with the University of Ghana Dental School. And I also have Dr. John Ganley. He is a senior lecturer with the School of Public Health, University of Ghana. We're looking at the environmental and health impact of Galamsey. Yes, you hear a lot about Galamsey. Some of it is political, some of it is, I don't know how else to put it, social. But we're looking at the impact on your health, your well-being, and the impact on our environment as part of this public lecture that is coming up. Prof, let me start with you. We've got this 6th biannual lecture coming up. It's a public lecture, so the target actually is the public. Am I right? Sorry. Yes, the public is the target.
Yeah, that's correct. Let me say good afternoon to all our listeners.
Mm-hmm. Right. So why are we targeting the public? They know we are academics, we are clinicians, and so on and so forth. And they hear a lot, especially or particularly in the news, in Parliament, about the damaging effects of Galamsey. And I'm glad this theme has been chosen. But why are we targeting the public for this?
Well, thank you very much. Like you rightly said, this is a public lecture. Mm-hmm. And we are targeting the public because issues of Galamsey affect everybody. And we want to focus on the public health impact of Galamsey. There are people who may have heard about Galamsey. They don't even know what it is.
Right.
They don't know how it goes on. They don't know what the effects are. Some may say that, well, as for me, I'm in Accra. The Galamsey is taking place in Takwa or in Dunkwa or somewhere, so I can't be affected.
Right.
But it goes beyond that. So we want to engage the public to create the awareness and at the same time educate them on the impact of this Galamsey.
Okay. For you, my discerning listeners, there is the actual public lecture which will come off on the 27th of September at 4 p.m. at the British Council Hall. 27th of September at 4 p.m. at the British Council Hall. There are key topics to be covered. Galamsey and non-communicable diseases. I've got the public health and other gurus in the studio to explain when we say the public health impact and we'll say non-communicable diseases in Ghana, and then the Galamsey menace in Ghana and the effect on infectious diseases as well. Right? These will be presented by Professor Richmond Aite. He's a lecturer with the School of Public Health, University of Ghana, and also Dr. Ago Asari, also with the Public Health Unit of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. The lecture will be chaired by the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Professor Nana Abba Apia Amfo. And make sure you don't miss that. It's a public lecture on the 27th at the British Council Hall, 4 p.m. But we have the main issues in the studio. Remember, we're live on Facebook and YouTube, and you can also get us by WhatsApp 055 11 11 997. So, Dr. Ganley, am I pronouncing your name right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. You're with public health, just like Prof. Kalistegu.
Yes.
Just let's look at the theme. Mm-hmm. Right? Why this theme for this year?
Right. So good afternoon to our listeners. Also, so like Prof said, we've had a lot of engagement with the public as a college over the years.
Okay.
And we focus on different aspects. I think the most recent one we had focused on COVID.
Right.
And this year in particular, we've looked around and if you think about one of the pressing issues at our time, it definitely is Galamsey. But not just because it's pressing, but because of what has been neglected.
Right.
Which is, like you started in your introduction, we've had different angles to the conversation, the politics of it, the environmental destruction and all of that. What we haven't really focused on is health,
right,
which is the short but also the long-term health impact of this. And so this particular lecture is kind of trying to draw some attention to that. Because we already see in the media report about water pollution. I mean, it's not just the water pollution.
Right.
There is a public health problem there. If the water is not properly treated, and probably we'll discuss a bit more about that, then we are at risk of all kinds of disease conditions. And I think for us, that is the reason why we've chosen to focus on Galamsey in this year's public lecture.
Okay, right. So if you've just joined us, that's the reason, that's the thrust, that's the focus. Yes, Galamsey is closer than you think, and this upcoming lecture is focusing on some of these health and environmental impacts. When you look at Ghana's economy, mining is a big thing, a big player in the economy, but at what cost? That's what the clinicians in the studio are going to discuss with us. At what cost? Reverend Dr. Ndanu, I mean...
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, looking at these interrelated things, we need to mine, right? And we need to mine safely. Galamsey refers to illegal mining, illegal small-scale mining. Am I right? Is there anything broader than that? And I'll come back to the others shortly.
I think so far, good afternoon, our listeners also. We have been informed, or most of the public believe that Galamsey is just a small-scale mining that people do illegally. That is the picture we have. Mm-hmm. But where we have gotten to now is something very massive.
Right.
And then we are sort of doing it unregulated. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the effect has become more pronounced and the scope has increased. But from where I see it, when you ask the question about why they focus this time, I think that even though, like you said, we have raised issues from different perspectives, for those of us in the hospitals, or we see the after effect of these things. And the best way to handle it is to find ways of informing our people to put in preventive measures.
Okay.
So we believe that arming the people who do it, or people that are directly affected, if we can provide adequate information about the impact it is having on them currently, or mid-term or long-term, they might rethink the way they are going about it. Okay. In addition to that, Galamsey is not just political issue. There are social, there's a bread and butter issue.
Yeah.
So we want to look at it more holistically, emphasizing the short, medium, and long term on their health.
All right, great. Now let me come to you, Prof. Calistego. I mean, if we're talking about, if I may, downstream or longer term health and environmental impacts, has the horse not already bolted? Of course, we need to understand that. But if somebody is mining and eventually or subsequently it will degrade the environment, it will affect communities, it will affect their access to good, clean water and so on and so forth. And we're talking about the health impact. Are we not too far downstream?
Well, it's a yes and no. Yes, because, I mean, a lot of damage has already been done.
Okay.
The best time to have talked about Galamsey and regulated it was 20 years ago. But the next best time is today. So yes, a lot of harm has been done already, but there is still some hope. There is still some opportunity for us to remedy what has been done wrongly.
Okay.
The problem we have with Galamsey is the regulation. You know, Galamsey is illegal mining.
Right.
What we are seeing now goes beyond the scope of just small scale. I mean, if you have excavators mining, that cannot be small scale. If you look at the regulations, I mean, small scale mining is using rudimentary equipment. But when you have the chamfans in the water bodies and the excavators, that is not small scale, but it's still illegal.
Right.
Okay. Now the issue.
So essentially, the term Galamsey could actually be misleading us.
Galamsey is an adulterated word.
To think
it means gather and sell.
Right.
Gather them and sell.
Right.
And that was what used to be happening in the past. I mean, if you look at the laws of Ghana, until 1989, every form of small-scale mining was illegal.
Right.
But then during the PNDC era, they brought in that Small-Scale Mining Act. And then people were required to meet certain standards. First, you need to acquire land, you need to have a title, you need to acquire permit from EPA, then you need permit from the Minerals Commission. And once these were met, another condition was land reclamation after the mining.
Okay.
So these regulations are there. So by these regulations, anybody mining in water bodies is illegal.
Right.
The challenge is that in reality, we don't have the capacity to supervise small-scale mining.
Okay.
And let me give you an example. I did some work in the Takwa area around 10 years ago. And if you know anything about the Takwa mining district, it extends from Dabuasi all the way to Enchi. At the time, they had 2 technical officers to supervise that whole enclave. At the time, they had 1.5 vehicles. Why do I say 1.5? They had one brand new vehicle and a rickety one that breaks down at will.
Right.
So and there were 2. So are they able to go around and inspect all these mining sites?
Right.
So we lack capacity to start with, to enforce the regulation. And that has been the problem.
Right.
But that is just one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is, like Tom said earlier, it's a bread and butter issue.
Yep.
It has to do with
Livelihoods.
So people would do anything.
At any cost.
At any cost. And it's not just the small-scale miners we see going down the pits. They are the small fries. It's an entire mafia.
Right.
You have traditional rulers, you have political leaders, you have the security agencies, all hands deep. My work there opened my eyes. Before you get to any Galamsey site, they actually have at least 2 checkpoints. Before you get to where they are doing the illegal mining, they have created their own checkpoints. You get to the first checkpoint, and it will take another 100 meters to get to the second checkpoint before you get to where they are mining. It's a way of protecting themselves.
Okay.
By the time you have gone past the first checkpoint, alarm has been raised.
Right.
So you get there and you won't find anybody.
Okay.
So those are the challenging issues.
Right.
With the process.
Okay, so we've gotten some sense of the scope, the magnitude of this problem, the kind of socio-economic factors that keep it in place, keep it ultimately resistant to all our best efforts to regulate. You've also cited deficiencies in capacity to regulate anyway, right? So that tells me that when we now shift gears to look at the toll, the cost, right, or the import of Galamsey on our environmental and other health issues, then there's, should I say, a horrifying story to be told. Yeah. Let's shift to that, right? And I'll stick with you, Prof. Calistego. So when we say health and environmental impact, and I'm glad you referred to work you have done personally and directly, and that comes under the purview of the theme of this lecture. What kind of things are we talking about?
Right. So let me start with the health impact.
Yeah.
We can look at this in different ways. We could look at it at the level of the individual miner, at the level of the immediate community, and then large scale countrywide.
Yeah.
We could also look at it long term, short term. So let me start with looking at it from the perspective of the miner who is doing the activity.
Okay.
When you look at the whole mining process, it starts with digging or blasting to get the ore.
Right.
That generates a lot of dust. So these miners are exposed to a lot of dust, and dust contains silica. When they inhale this over prolonged periods, they tend to develop what we call silicosis. It's some kind of damage to the lungs.
Okay.
Now that makes them more susceptible to other kinds of chest infections.
Right.
So tuberculosis is quite common amongst these people. Other respiratory infections come in quite easily. Beyond that, as they go down into the belly of the earth, they have this helmets, which is supposed to have a torch.
Right.
Most of them are not able to afford it. So typically what they do is they get battery, the normal torchlight.
Right.
And since they want to cast cuts, they use tiger head batteries. And then they use car dusters to tie this thing around their head with that torchlight.
Right.
By the time you are in there for an hour or two, the light has dimmed.
Right.
So they are working in very dimly lit environments. That has an effect on their eyes. They are not able to coordinate. They strain, and they develop a condition which we call the minus nystagmus.
Right.
Have difficulty in coordination as far as vision is concerned, in addition to other injuries to the eyes.
Okay.
Beyond that, when you move out and you come to the environment in which they work, because of the lots of digging and all that around, you tend to have puddles of water all around.
Right.
Now, these serve as breeding grounds for vectors that transmit diseases, commonly mosquitoes. So you can think about all the diseases that are transmitted by the mosquito, from malaria to yellow fever to dengue fever to lymphatic filariasis. These are all transmitted by different types of mosquitoes.
Right.
Beyond that, the conditions under which they work again are insanitary. So they have no proper places of convenience. So everything is released directly into the water bodies. So you have pollution of these water bodies by fecal matter. And so all the diarrheal diseases you can think about, from cholera to typhoid to Shigella, whatever, they are all rife in that environment. If you go beyond that, they are working in very muddy environment, some of them barefoot. Those who can afford Wellington boots, they will be in those boots for a whole day. So for those working barefoot, they are exposed to the worms. Soil-transmitted helminths.
Right.
These can cause all sort of infestations that can lead to anemia over a long period of time. For those that wear the Wellington boots, they are more prone to fungal infections, foot rot, etc. So
these are the direct impact on those directly involved. You've talked about the miners. Of course, there are women, children, and other people in different roles in this, should I say, enterprise, right? And many of them, to maybe a lesser degree, are exposed to these same conditions you are talking about, right? Dr. Ganley, I mean, this spreads, and I know Prof was going to proceed upwards, right?
Yep.
Small community, larger community, and then the broad scope of the impact on our health and our well-being. But again, because this is an illegal activity to start with, right? The kind of settlements, the kind of resources available are also impacted.
Yeah.
And therefore, people are making do with water which we can't even describe, right? Can we cast the net further afield to understand? I mean, I understand the direct individual impact on the miners, and I guess Prof has been pretty
extensive,
modest in listing the kind of conditions these Galamsey workers are exposed to. Can we cast our minds to the communities?
Yeah.
What kind of impacts are we looking at again?
Okay, so maybe I continue from a bit of the pollution part.
Right.
So two of the chemicals that are commonly used in these operations are, you think about mercury and then cyanide.
Right.
And these are things that are direct, especially cyanide is directly used in the water, bodies, and it's literally discharged into the water bodies. Of course, these are chemicals that basically contain metal particles.
Right.
And we know that once you start to consume this, maybe in the short term it doesn't show anything, but over time, then you have high levels of concentration of metals in your blood. And that leads to different kinds of complications. So that's one thing, thinking about the communities that are, for example, dependent on natural sources of water bodies and all of that.
And this, of course, seeps into groundwater.
Exactly. In fact, there's research that suggests that oranges that are grown in the context of places that are heavily mined, where cyanide is discharged, they've seen traces of these chemicals in there.
Right.
So you go to town in Accra here and you buy an orange that is coming from an area that has been heavily mined, and then you eat it. You feel you're far away from Galamsey, but in actual fact
you are exposed.
Exactly. So that's one bit. But I think about and you've talked about the community aspect.
Right.
So one of the things that we're going to be thinking about is the communicable diseases. And this
Right.
case, I want to talk about maybe what we would call sexually transmitted infections, because that is also one of the areas that there's a lot of work done that suggests that you start to see increase in sexually transmitted infectious diseases, including HIV and AIDS, in communities where you have these activities going on.
Right.
Because then there's cash, and then you have young women also looking for sources of livelihood.
Right.
So there are all kinds of exchanges happening. And so people are unable to protect themselves, and then so that generates a whole range of infectious diseases that you then have to deal with
Right.
in the
So
long.
the socioeconomic factors.
Okay, can I just?
Yeah.
I mean, just to add up to what Dr. Ganley was saying, during my work, I encountered this young man, 22 years. At the time of talking to him, he had 9 girlfriends.
Yeah.
All right, just to buttress that point of sexually transmitted. So
Okay.
we asked him, how do you manage it? And to quote, I said, Galamsey I wasn't sure. Which means,
Hot.
Galamsey's money, you chop it as it comes. You don't plan because
He's in high demand.
no, he faces death
Yeah.
literally every day. He says each time they are going down that pit, for them, they may never
You
come
don't know
back.
when you're coming back.
So Galamsey Sika was in the show. You are not going to save it so that when you die, somebody else will come and enjoy. That's another bit. And then the effect on the extended society. We all love tilapia.
Right.
All right.
Don't
Now,
go there.
tilapia is one of the fishes
Don't
in
do
which
this.
mercury bioaccumulates.
Yeah.
So, those of you who love your banku and tilapia, sorry to burst your bubble. Not all tilapia has mercury anyway. But it's one of the fishes, especially in their gills.
Right.
Mercury accumulates. So, you are sitting here and you are enjoying your tilapia. As for me, I'm not in Takwa, I'm not in Obuasi.
Let the politicians, parliamentarians fight over this. Me is not
Exactly.
it's not close to
But
me.
it's closer than we think.
Yeah.
It's closer than we think.
Right. Listeners, if you just joined us, 33 minutes past the hour, 2 on Joy 99.7 FM. We're considering the environmental and health impact of Galamsey, the real cost of the gold. Yeah, not all that glitters. Even most of what they bring out doesn't glitter initially, but the trouble behind it, the import for your health and well-being and for our environment. The College of Health Sciences of the University of Ghana is having its 6th biennial public lecture. Right. 6th biennial public lecture on the 27th of September at the British Council Hall, 4 p.m. Targeting the public, equipping you and empowering you with the information we are sharing here on Joy 99.7 FM. If you have any questions, concerns, WhatsApp is 055 11 11 997. We're live on Facebook and YouTube, and the phone line is active 030-221-6541. If you have any direct questions of my guests in the studio. Now, this kind of hotspot of impacts and activity and exchanges, be they physical, psychological, social, socio-economic. If you recall, when we're looking at the HIV and its explosion, these migrant workers and railway projects and other things, that was the fulcrum where all this kind of activity takes place. Our clinicians are looking at this and monitoring carefully. And there's direct empirical evidence that correlates these mining activities and the, escalation in many health and environmental conditions of note. Some of them have been mentioned already, right? And that is what this lecture focuses on. If you have any questions, concerns, phone line active, 030-221-6541. WhatsApp is 055 11 11 997. The program is Ultimate Health on Joy 99.7 FM. So coming back to these issues, some people will say, but these illnesses, we know them, of course, sexually transmitted infections. I've mentioned that there is a correlation, empirically verified, that shows the escalation of these conditions. Reverend Dr. Ndano, many people want to argue that, look, man must eat. Like Khalid said, wasn't then show.
Wasn't sure.
Right? You are making money, and maybe the kind of impact we are talking about may not be visible to the general public, right? Let's talk a bit about the work we've done and the work that will be presented, right? It directly speaks to these impacts. So we're saying that typhoid, the diarrheal, respiratory, and other conditions, right? We can directly link them to this activity. So in communities close and not so close, this is demonstrated.
Exactly. Let me just add to what my colleagues have mentioned. I'm happy they have mentioned the direct health and social impact. Where I particularly am very interested in is some of the conditions are not immediate.
Right.
Especially areas where you have the pollution.
Doc, if I can just take this caller and then come back to you. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Right, who's speaking? Where are you calling from?
Seth calling from Accra.
Seth from Accra. Please go ahead quickly.
Yes. Grateful for your insights. I would like to find out if the public lecture may be live broadcasted, since some of us are not in Accra. And two, I want to find out if this education you are giving us, is this knowledge lacking for people who are managing the affairs of Ghana, so that this it has to go to this extent for pollution to have all this effect, and still we are trying hard to even think about managing or controlling Galamsey. Are we a nation that is so damped with leaders that we are not able to manage? At the end, everybody will be affected. Health will be affected. Meanwhile, look at our health sector. Right. And then we have been a lot of challenges have been added on.
Okay. I
can't just fathom why we are a nation that we cannot control ourselves. And every day, look at the education we are giving every blessed time on Joy FM. But,
right.
I mean, it's like
great points. Okay.
Everybody, management is adamant.
Right.
God help Ghana.
Right. He's trying to ask, tongue in cheek. So, is it just the clinicians and academicians who have monopoly over this knowledge and this information? Are we now realizing our leaders and managers, should I say, oblivious totally of this danger, this ticking time bomb, and the evidence and the footprints of its impact? He's also asking if the public lecture is available online for those who are not in Accra. I'm getting the nods. Yeah.
Yes. It will be.
All right.
It will be live stream and through YouTube and Facebook. Yes.
Okay. On YouTube and Facebook.
Yes.
Live. Okay.
Yes.
So 27th, 4 p.m. live stream.
Exactly.
Yes. So we don't do research in a closet and hide and get our degrees and be happy with ourselves. Dissemination. Our last caller is asking, why are we now talking about this? Well, why we waited? Or why does it seem that we waited?
Well, we haven't waited. I talked about work we did
10 years.
2013, 2014. We did that with a team from the University of Michigan. It was sponsored by the Fogarty Foundation.
Right.
Now, after that meeting, we held a dissemination meeting with the then Minister for Lands and Natural Resources and then Minister for Science and Environment.
Okay.
At a hotel in East Legon, we gave them a position paper stating all the facts and all the concerns together with recommendations.
Okay.
I have personally been on the same platform not too long ago, 2017, 2018.
Yep.
With the then Minister for Environment, Science and Technology, where I have actually shared some of my publications.
Right.
I have been on the platform with some of them. I have shared these information.
Okay, Prof, you've done your part. Let's hear their response. What has happened since this and many other efforts at proper informed dissemination? What was the response? If you have ministers and other representatives, stakeholders, key stakeholders, and policy, should I say, makers. Just chew on that. Let me quickly take this call and come back. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Oti.
Right, who am I speaking to?
Oti Watson from Chema.
Oh, my brother Oti, you're welcome. Quickly.
Yeah, my question and my suggestion that we have some cocoa farm in Wasa area there. And I went there, they are doing a lot of galamsey. And I asked them, ask them, why are they doing guarantee? So ask them, they are not nearing the water. So they are doing different place.
The answer was that they are nowhere near water.
Yeah, lake or water. So they just dig the ground and the water will come and they use that water to do the galamsey. And it told me that the cocoa, where there's a gold, the cocoa will not grow. If they planted cocoa there, you see cocoa will not grow because of the gold in the ground. It's not coming. So I was really worried. And not if you go to Wasa area there, their job is galamsey. If you work the morning, the guys who are going to galamsey, like the whole town is going to galamsey. So I was thinking these professors and staff doing the lectures in Accra here, why can't they go to that place? And Mrs. call the chief and stuff that this is the issue. Because you are still in the studio and saying that it's not urbanized. The people who are doing the turn in the ground there, they are different place and it was speaking in different place. So, okay.
All right. Okay. So, Oti is giving us his own direct experience in Wasa. And he's wondering, well, is this talk, this public lecture, is it well positioned for the people at the, should I say, heart of the matter to hear and modify? He's talking about chiefs and other things. We'll come to that in a second. I have another caller. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, good afternoon. Who am I speaking to?
You're speaking to Michael.
Michael?
I'm calling from Kosovo.
Okay, Michael, shoot.
This galamsey matter is not about we the youth. You see, sometimes the leaders don't know that even this galamsey is going on, is spoiling things on our own. Look at the whole water. The whole water we can drink is poisoning. At least for so many years, how is it going to make that water to be a good water so that they will drink tomorrow coming? You see, this galamsey, let's we the youth and the leaders forget that we are following gold, money. Let's think about our life. What is life? We should think about this thing very well, not today, not tomorrow.
Right.
A time coming. Even, you see, sometimes, in fact, I cry, but I couldn't understand how even we are watching it on tele or we are watching it face to face, how the water, the color is. What are we talking about in Ghana? What are we talking? Let's rise up and do something about this water because waterways is suffering.
Well put. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you. Right. So you hear my listeners, right? They express these concerns. The average person sees themselves as nobody. And therefore, when they are exposed to this kind of information, then they look to leaders, policymakers, and so on and so forth. And they are trying to bend their minds around to see, well, where do you fit in this pipeline? Because our academic, clinical, and other researchers feed into policy, public health policy, and so on. We have laws on lands, mining, and so on and so forth, which have public health inputs, right, and are supposed to have protected us. It looks like, do we shut our eyes and ears? This is what our listeners are asking. Let me start with Dr. Gadle and then come back. Okay, right. Yes. Prof. Tego has to leave, so he wants to make some quick.
All right, thank you very much. So the issues that have been raised, I'm very familiar with the Wasa area.
Okay.
I did my national service at Wasa Memphis.
Okay.
And my work was done in the Takwa area, so I'm very conversant with what happens there. And that brings us to the point of the environmental impact.
Right.
You know, it's ignorance that a land where there is gold, cocoa will not grow.
Right.
The gold is very deep in the belly of the earth. Cocoa takes its nutrients not that deep. But having said that, if we look at the environmental impact, there is destruction of farmlands.
Right.
What is going to happen is that over time, we are not going to have any more farms.
And
Cocoa is our cash crop. Very soon, our production levels would go very low. That is going to affect national income. Mm-hmm. It's going to affect food production, and that can lead to famine and more nutrition long term.
Right.
So it's not just about cocoa and cocoa cannot grow where gold is.
Right.
That is one part. The unfortunate part is that the people who are supposed to be enforcing and protecting us, some of them are neck deep.
Involved.
Let me share another experience. I went to a community as part of my research trying to recruit miners to interview. And for 3 days, I got just about 2 or 3 people until somebody hinted me, look, go and talk to the assemblyman. This is a community near Prestia.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to see this assemblyman. I said, Doc, don't worry, I'll help you. He gave me a time. I showed up that day. I recruited over 103 illegal miners. What was happening? He was the kingpin. He owned the pit. He employed the miners. And so he had control over them. They are more organized than we think. Right. They actually have an association. As part of my work, I was made to do a presentation to their executives because the miners will not talk to me if it is not sanctioned by their executives.
Right.
So they are more organized than we think. And this is a complete mafia. There are some communities where a Land Cruiser V8 was bought for the chief. Yeah. Prior to the mining activities.
Right.
Then they started the mining activities. He wanted to make noise. They said, okay, if you want to make noise, return the V8. And the man had gotten used to riding a V8, so he kept quiet.
He tied his hands.
Yes. So these are the realities on the ground.
So we are actually reaching the men and women on the ground in these affected communities, okay? Definitely will extend this, especially with Prof. Calistego. He has to leave. He's off to Kumasi. And now that he tells me that he did his national service in Prestia, I'm looking at his gray hair and wondering whether it could be related. But we still have Reverend Dr. Ndanu and Dr. Ganle in the studio. Now let's look at the socio-economic ramifications, all right? Even in the possession of this good information, communities must sustain themselves. If farmlands have been, should I say, destroyed, and if the key drivers for revenue, income, and sustenance for these communities are indeed this
driving force
activity, is it a surprise that they are unable to respond to the damaging effects and change their ways, or should I say refrain from and join the clarion call to protect their environment and indeed their very own lives? They are caught in between a rock and a hard place. And of course, there's always talk of alternative livelihoods to protect against these health and environmental impacts. But it doesn't seem like it offsets the scale in any significant, meaningful way. How do we move forward on these things we're now very much aware of? It's not a recent issue. How do we balance that for the community? Because they look at you, they must sustain themselves.
Yeah. So I think one point to add is that and this is also like in relation to work that I've been personally involved.
Let me just quickly read this out. It seems the youth in our country have lost hope in the country, and rightly so. A visit to any of the embassies and the queue there is telling. Can our leaders at least do something to restore the hopes they had in earlier 1950s and 60s? This is from Ganame Happy Home, right? Probably talking about the despondency and the despair, which also fuels the activity we are talking about.
Exactly. Yes. So I was saying that part of the reason why it's become very complicated is, and this is again coming from the Takwa Insuem area,
right?
That in some places Galamsey is also a protest. That communities feel that they have been dispossessed for a long time. So you live in an area, it's like a forest reserve, and then government acquires it, they award it to a mining company. The company comes in, mines, takes away the resources, and then it's like, we don't get anything.
Right.
So you go in, and then the chief say, why not? This belongs to us.
Right.
If our young people can mine, and like you said, give me a V8, why not? So there are places that...
So they rather wrongly feel empowered.
Yes.
We are taking charge of what is ours.
Exactly.
And we'll use it to benefit
ourselves.
And then directly.
We can all face the consequences. So this is an important part of why it is so difficult to deal with it, because there are a lot of community leaders who are actually protesting that for a very long time they have been denied, what is supposedly theirs. And I think this is, if we are going to start to think about addressing this, that is a good starting point. Because I think the evidence is also clear that where you have community leaders say, no, this won't happen in my land, we often tend to see good results.
We see good results, but they would also tend to ask you, at what cost?
Exactly.
Okay. I've read reports, WASH reports, PATH, and other agencies where it is demonstrated that, ironically, these areas are the ones deficient in clinics, health care infrastructure, schools, and other things, despite the ravaging and ongoing mining activity, both legal and illegal, right? They see all these things and they wonder, well, can we not, yes, we understand you, typhoid, diarrhea, respiratory, poisoning of our water bodies, and so on and so forth, but we seem able to look after ourselves better than relying on the regulated, right, formal system. So they are not responding properly to these impacts.
Yes, I'm very happy Doctor has raised this aspect. I strongly believe that the mining industry in our country has not served our people well. Just as you expressed, here we are, a huge mining company extracting millions, if not billions of dollars of resources from our land. And here we are. We don't have good schools, no good roads, we don't have good water, no good health facility. Then we begin to ask ourselves, what is the benefit of these things to us who are having the direct effect of that mining?
Right.
We are not getting it, but the minerals are in our soil. We will choose our way of getting our part of the resource.
Right.
So what I think maybe government must begin to look at, when the mining company comes into an environment, a district, a town, or wherever it may be, there must be a well-integrated program to take good care of the people on that land. See, we have not taken that.
But Doc,
yes,
just the people and the environment.
That is the point.
The environment is our life.
The point is that we are living in that environment, and that's where we survive. And if we are not running the system, the industry is not running in such a way that, one, we run the environment is sustained, our livelihood is taken care of, our health and these things are not put together in a comprehensive program.
Right.
What will happen is that we, those on the ground, we see those people as enemies, and we will see the regulators of government taking the money from us. We see them as enemies. So what Dr. Gandhi said fits exactly in their mindset.
Right.
In addition to that, you see, if I am hungry, my immediate concern is how to fill my tummy.
Right.
And if you create an environment where the people will feel hungry, sometimes it's a strategy, it's a political, economic strategy. Get them very hungry so that you can throw out crumbs to them. You can control them.
People
exactly.
Are easy to manipulate.
Easily to manipulate and control. So this is like we have been saying, it's a very complex issue, but there is a solution.
Okay. Let me just come to Dr. Ganley, because of course we're going to have this public lecture, right? As I've said, on the 27th.
Yes.
4 p.m. at the British Council, chaired by none other than our own Vice Chancellor. Very, very, very distinguished speakers, right?
Yes.
Galamsey and non-communicable diseases in Ghana, the Galamsey menace and its effect on infectious diseases. So communicable and non-communicable.
Exactly.
Yes.
We have ample evidence, and this will be presented.
Yes.
What is our objective? We're running out of time, but what is our objective? Are we just as academicians happy to tickle our bellies and say we presented as doctor, professor, why? What is the downstream objective, having chosen this theme? What are we looking at as dividends or yields from this public lecture?
Okay. So there are a number of things we are looking at.
As quickly as we can crystallize.
Yeah. So I think one is the public education that is happening right now.
Okay.
In terms of trying to break down direct effect of galamsey, that the everyday things that we do. So that's one level. The other level is to think about, again, a form of reminding the policymaker that this is bigger than you think, and this is closer than you think. So hopefully, the pieces of evidence that is going to be presented at the public lecture is also meant to drive a certain conversation, a policy conversation that should hopefully see people act.
Okay.
So we are looking at it like not just educating the public, but we're also looking at making sure that the policymaker gets to see the evidence, they get to hear the evidence, and hopefully that should again prompt some action.
Are we? I know the structure and the modus operandi for these public lectures. Is the College of Health Science looking, for example, to come out with some communique, some recommendations to key policy drivers?
Yes,
I think the public would love to see something they can rally behind.
Yes.
As a product of this
in fact,
lecture.
We've always done that. Anytime the lecture is delivered, we produce sometimes we produce a communique, and sometimes some policy briefs based on what has been presented, and then we do share those ones. So this would happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
In addition to that, at the lecture, people be given a chance to ask questions, seek clarification, and that we wanted to, like you said, start the conversation all over again on a broader scale, just as we are doing right now.
Okay.
So that's one of the goals we want to achieve.
Right. Why would I attend? I mean, I'm listening to Norte and Dr. Ndano and Dr. Ganley and just left us Professor Calistego. They are armed to the teeth with the evidence, right? Why would I attend? Why should I attend? Of course, we've heard it will be on YouTube and Facebook and other things. But what would you say to those listening to us who are thinking of coming?
Face-to-face interaction gives more feel.
If I'm a chief in one of these areas, should I come?
Why not?
Would I get assistance to support and protect my community, my people?
Why not? I mean, I think this would be a good platform for such a person.
For engagement.
Yes, to engage and to say, look, this is the example we have from here, and this is what we are doing, or this is what we are unable to do, and then you can actually then get like-minded people to support. So I think that's one very good reason to come on board, apart from the learning that would take place. I think it's a good opportunity to build a coalition of network that can actually support you to take action. And we're looking forward to that.
Right. Lastly, also, will there be on showcase or on show evidence of things we have been able to do with this knowledge and information that is yielding positive results? Are there best scenarios or good stories from some of these researchers and some of these communities?
And this is not a conference, just a public lecture.